Hey, this is Greg McAfee, and welcome to the Greg McAfee Show. Now let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to the Greg McAfee Show, where we discuss the steps to successful entrepreneurship, how to take your business to new heights, and ultimately follow your dreams. Today we're going to be discussing how to be a trailblazer. Someone told me the other day, I was on a podcast and I said, we've been doing something for about 8 years. And the other guy that was being interviewed said, McAfee is known in the industry to be a trailblazer. I didn't have it completely down as much as this company has it down. In other words, they've perfected it. They've invested a lot of money in it, but I had it down well enough to work for us, and it worked very well. So I got to thinking about what's a trailblazer, right? So for the purposes of this session, I'm going to tell you what a trailblazer is not, because if you Google trailblazer, a lot of times you're going to come up with some of these definitions. And they define trailblazer as like some business owner who is derailed off doing his own thing. That is not what we're talking about today at all. Someone who's extremely emotional. That is not what we're talking about at all. Maybe extremely passionate, yes. Someone who is skeptical of their team. Not at all. Actually, quite the opposite. Trusts their team, encourages their team, motivates their team. Someone who constantly is changing the plan. No, that's not what we're talking about. Actually, a trailblazer is very concerned about their business, so they want to be consistent. They just want to try to find new things before anyone else. Someone who manipulates people while exalting their self. No, quite the opposite. We try to actually lift up others, and we kind of lay low and just keep driving hard. And then they also said, now I searched this in many different websites, but something else that came up is that they're a leader in title only. And no, that's not the case at all. Actually, they're extremely good leaders. I just put myself in that bracket of trailblazer, but there's a lot better or bigger trailblazers than me out there, especially when you think of Steve Jobs and people like that. So just realize that if you are a trailblazer, now we're going to talk about becoming a trailblazer and what it takes, but it's actually in your DNA already. It's already there. You just need to fine tune it and make it happen. But you realize that you're different. You realize that you're not satisfied with status quo. A trailblazer is just never satisfied with status quo. They're always wanting to move the bar. They're always wanting to do something different, something that the customer wants but is not receiving now, something like that. Some product that the customer doesn't even know they need yet, kind of like a smartphone. So that's why they have to be innovative. Because they're never satisfied, and they have to be innovative, and they have to continue to grow, and they have to continue to even pushing people as part of a trailblazer, kind of pushing people to a level that they didn't even know they could achieve, and that's exciting. And often we are ready, fire, aim type of people. Now, not always, but sometimes we are, because we get excited. We're passionate, and sometimes we do get in a hurry. And sometimes it works and sometimes it don't. But we don't get stuck in what don't work. We don't get stuck there. And we do get bored easy. And when we're ready for the next idea, when we're ready for change, when we've been doing this long enough now where we're ready to change, and sometimes when you have different people on your leadership team or your board or whatever committee, a lot of people like status quo. A lot of people like doing the same thing over and over, and they don't like change. So You can make them, if you're a trailblazer, you're going to make them feel uncomfortable at times, and so be it. If you're the leader, go for it. If you're sitting on a board, and I've sat on advisory boards before where the leader you could tell he or she wasn't a trailblazer, and you really had to push them into they were very uncomfortable. And I don't last long on those types of boards, because I like boards. I like companies that are run by, if I'm going to sit on their board, I like companies that are run by movers, shakers, making things happen, up for a new idea. We used to play a brainstorming game, and we had these styrofoam balls, and anytime anyone would say that's not a good idea or that'll never work, everybody throws a ball at them. So you got to make things happen. In my book, Build and Grow Your HVAC Business, which I don't talk enough about. In chapter 8, I talk about the power of disruption. And I define a business disruption as any innovative, outside-the-box idea, whether it is a service or invention, that leaves any and all competitors flat out speechless. And that's what I'm looking for. And I also noted in the book that the disruption mind is where entrepreneurs should be spending their most time at. I mean, that's the disruption mind is where we need to spend our time at, because, it's when you're disrupting your industry or your market, there's nothing more exciting for a trailblazer, because it moves everyone's cheese, and some companies end up going out of business because of it, and they just don't know how to handle it. And I give many examples in my book, from the easiest years and years ago. I had an employee, his name was Scott. He's my first employee. He was with me about 10 years, and ended up marrying someone whose dad had a small heating and air company, and he went to work for him, and then he bought the business out from him. So anyway, Scott was very meticulous and a really good employee. And he came up with, back then, this was new to at least our market, it was new. It was pre-bending, we called it pre-bending copper tubing, or refrigerant lines. So the only braze we had was at the outdoor unit and in the indoor A coil. That's the only fitting, or that's the only braze we had. There were no fittings in between. It was one continuous pipe, which meant it just wasn't going to leak. If it had a leak, it was going to be in either the outdoor unit or the indoor A coil. So what we did was we adopted that. We bought all the equipment for the benders. So everything we do at McAfee, we pre-bend all the copper, and then we hook it up, and it's nice and neat, and we can bend a 90, or we can bend whatever we want in the pipe. But basically, I was my only salesperson back then. So when I sold, I would ask the question or find out, did they have any leaks in the system? Did they have to put a lot of refrigerant in it over the years? And if they did, that was pain for them, having to do that all the time. So when I told them about how we did things, and they go, huh, nobody else mentioned that. And I said, very few companies do this. We would get the sale, okay? And then throughout the years, we came up with 8 to 8, same great rate. We had a lot of people, a lot of customers asking for after-hours service. They didn't want us to be like a utility company where we say we're going to show up between 8 and 12 or 12 and 5, and then sometimes never show up. So we come up with 8 to 8, same great rate. It was a big hit, and it grew our company. It helped grow our company much quicker during the first 3 to 4 years of that, because the most popular time for a service call became between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. when everyone else was closed, or charging the enormous emergency call rates. Okay, so that's disrupting, and that's where I spend my time is, what can we do different that just really disrupts our competition? Because I want to keep them on their toes. I want to throw them off their game, whatever it takes. So what I'm going to do is I've got a handful of things that describe a trailblazer, and I'm going to kick off with number one. A trailblazer is a disruptor. Like I said, they go where others aren't willing to go. They go first. And, many say the first one in to something, whether it's a new product, whether it's a new service, whether it's an invention, the first one in may have more difficulty, because if it doesn't work, then you were known as, the company that tried something new and it didn't work. Well, gosh, if we based everything on that, Thomas Edison would be known as a failure, because how many times did it take to make a light bulb? It didn't work. So we like being first in. We like jumping in first, head first sometimes. But so it is risky. Some people say, well, isn't it risky being first in? Yes. Next question. It's being an entrepreneur is risky. I mean, if you don't want risk, don't own your own business. Okay? So author and futurist Daniel Burrus, which I follow on many different social media forums, he is just a neat guy to listen to. I'm intrigued by how he thinks. He challenges my thinking, and that's what I like. And but he said it used to be that the big eat the small, but now it's the fast eat the slow. So fast is the new big. And I'm telling you, people don't like you in their house too long. When we first got in business, there were companies taking 2 and 3 days to do an install of a residential replacement system. And we figured out how to do it in 1 day and do it right, and get in, get out, move on to the next job. Of course, the faster we can do a job, the more we can do in a week, right? And that just made sense to me. So we got a system down, like we talked about last week, a system. We got a system down how to do an install, and how to do it in anywhere from 6 to 8 hours average. We can do an install, and that includes, all accessories, new indoor unit, new outdoor unit, pad, disconnect, line set, pre-bending the line set, all that stuff, in and out. And people like that. And it's they don't have to take off work more than 1 day if they even want to take off work. So, when Apple launched the first iPhone in 2007, folks, an iPhone hasn't been out that long. I mean, that's 15 years. We're in 2022 right now, and that's 15 years. And it seems like iPhones have been out forever, but they have not been out that long. But when they came out in 2007, one of the comments from the CEO of Research in Motion, which is also known as RIM, they're the company that created the BlackBerry. Now listen to this. Their CEO said, why would anyone want to watch a video on a phone? Obviously, he did not know the future, right? And if you think about that, I mean, here he is, multi-billion-dollar company, has the BlackBerry, the iPhone comes out, and you can watch a video on the phone, and he's questioning who would ever want to do that. Well, millions of people. Same way with Blockbuster. I've talked about Blockbuster several times, but, Blockbuster, while the board of directors was sitting around a big table, drinking coffee and eating bonbons and talking about how can we let the customer keep our video longer. Netflix came in and blew them away. Netflix owner even offered them twice to buy Netflix and or partner with them, and they did not. They turned them down. Actually laughed. And well, we know where Netflix is today, and we know where Blockbuster is today. It didn't work out too good for them. But I was talking to someone the other day. Had Blockbuster partnered with Netflix and let Netflix run this part and let Blockbuster run this part, the company would probably be twice as big today as Netflix. Think about that. Dean Burris also says, failing to see the future, failing to understand the difference between hard trends, which are trends that will happen, and soft trends, which are trends that may happen, is often causes companies to fall behind. And with today's rapid pace of technology changes, falling behind can mean you may never catch up. I mean, you just might never catch up. Daniel Burris calls thinking in the future. It helps with problem skipping, because when you start thinking about the future and you start thinking about where things are going, you can actually skip over problems, because you know if it's a hard trend, you know this is going to happen. And so we don't have to worry about this anymore, because this is going to happen. In other words, we don't have to worry about the BlackBerry anymore, because the iPhone came out, and who has a BlackBerry today? I don't know if anybody has a BlackBerry. I still know of a few people who have a flip phone by choice, but I don't know anybody that has a BlackBerry. So, when you fall behind, it's hard to catch up. And it also, when you're thinking about the future, you're making the invisible more visible. And, don't we all wish, we could do that more, but it really does take, by the way, before I just let it sit here and then at the end wonder why I didn't talk about this. This is Daniel Burris's book, Flash Foresight. And, it's how to see the invisible and do the impossible. 7 radical principles that will transform your business. I recommend this book highly. It's a great book, and Daniel's an extremely intelligent person. And he really, really is intriguing to listen to, because he just has the foresight and the wisdom to figure out trends and then base a lot of decisions on those trends. Okay, number 2, trailblazers are hard workers. They're mostly considered overachievers. But that does not mean they work 24/7. Because if they worked all the time, they would never have enough time to think of better ideas. And trailblazers are constantly thinking of, how can I make this better? What can we do to improve this customer service or this customer's product or whatever it might be? How can we install it faster? We've done many cool things, really, to get products in a customer's home that, in a way that other companies have never thought of. And I'm not going to go into all that detail, but I can tell you there are some very creative ways that we've come up with selling product a different way in the residential HVAC world. Now, I think I talk a lot about Harvey Firestone and Henry Ford, and they just did a lot of thinking. Harvey Firestone had around 42,000 employees by the time he was 40 years old, and he still went to his family farm sometimes over the weekend, and sat there and fished and thought and just thought all weekend about how to handle a problem or how to come up with a new idea. And then he'd go back to his big board table with all these board of directors, and he'd share what he thought about over the weekend, and they'd implement it, and boom, lots of success. Henry Ford did very similar things. Henry Ford got out a lot and would think by himself. So got to be a thinker to be a trailblazer, because it's just not going to come to you while you sleep. Okay, trailblazers, number 3, are also innovators. They make their own rules and don't buy into what has always worked in the past. They find a gap and they fill it. So they find a gap and they fill it. And they're not rule followers. That doesn't mean they break the law or anything. They just don't follow every rule. They're going to step outside the boundaries once in a while. They're going to step over the line every once in a while. And they're going to try something new. And sometimes the chances of it working is 50-50, but they're willing to take that because they think differently, and they make up new rules that other people end up following later. And trailblazers, number 4, also see failure as an opportunity for growth. They don't get stuck on failure. To them, failure is part of their succeeding and how they do things, and they just don't get stuck there. Sometimes it hurts. It definitely hurts to fail. It hurts our pride. It hurts our wallet sometimes. But you know what? We're moving forward, because like Thomas Edison knew when his building burnt down, he said, I now know thousands of ways to not make a light bulb. So it wasn't failure. And, as his building was being burnt down, not being burnt down, but burning, they said, what are you going to do? And he said, I can't wait to rebuild. I mean, he was just so positive, because I can make some of the advances I wanted to make in the building. So anyway, I just like to read a lot about those guys, Firestone, Ford, and Edison, way ahead of their time. Okay, it's important to look at your mistakes honestly and learn from them. Trailblazers also let go of the past and start making history, basically. So they let go of the past and they start making history. And history can be the iPhone, whatever. So number 5, trailblazers are relentless. A vision will not only guide you, but also provide the resilience to not give up. I mean, they are just relentless in succeeding and making something work. Trailblazers, they just persevere, and in the face of uncertain success, they don't know if it's going to succeed. See, I mean, it's the unknown, and trailblazers are not afraid of the unknown. It's okay to try something and not know it's going to work. A lot of people aren't there. No one's afraid to try something if it's guaranteed to work. But a trailblazer is willing to try something and not know if it works. So trailblazers persevere in the face of uncertain success. They actually bleed red and the color of tenacity, whatever color that is. Okay, so number 6, trailblazers are not afraid to make small course corrections when required that will ultimately lead to big success. And get this, before Google acquired YouTube, they were struggling to make a Google's video product even work. So big old Google, before they bought YouTube, and I think they bought it for 1 point something billion, and today it's doing over 90 billion. Ridiculous, right? But here they were, before they acquired YouTube, they were struggling to make a Google video product work. So, but they weren't afraid, and they conquered it by buying YouTube. So, I mean, if you can't come up with something, buy out someone who's already made it work. Number 7, Trailblazers take a step back and don't make criticism personal. They are not only willing to hear feedback, both negative and positive, but they thrive off of it. And I'll be honest with you, when someone comes to me and says, hey, I see how you're doing this, but I'd like to give you some advice. Oh, man, sit down. Let's make a pot of coffee here. Let's talk about it. I can't wait to hear it. Some people, I'm like, I see something wrong, and I go, do you care if I give you some advice? And they're like, well, I don't know. Is it good or bad? Who cares? You know, if it's bad, it might help you. So it's all good, right? So even if you have bad news for me when you're giving me advice, it's all good, because maybe I should change and make it better. But we thrive. I thrive off of feedback, both negative and positive. I mean, not everything's fun to hear, but I want to hear it. That's why I do focus groups, and I bring people in and I ask them, how do you like this? How do you like how we do this? How do you like how we serve you in this area? How do you like this? Or how do you not like this? I mean, I want both. Feed me, make me better. It's a natural high for me. It's like being in a brainstorming meeting when someone is sharing how to make my business or how to make me better. Okay, so those were 7 things about a trailblazer. When you realize that you need to make a change in strategy, or that something in your business is not working, or even that something in your life is not working, don't fight it. Don't fight it, and don't ignore it, because I got news for you, folks. It will not go away. It's that snowball effect that actually it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So don't ignore it, and don't fight it. We want you to pivot. Just pivot a little bit. If you've ever played basketball, you know what pivot means. It's a slight movement without taking your foot off the ground in basketball, without taking your foot off the court. But pivot, move toward it, face it, and embrace it. And, we're talking about a change in strategy. Trailblazers see that they need to make a change in strategy. Now, I can tell you that strategy based on certainty has no risk. Such as in my world of HVAC, when the government got involved and wanted to change R22 refrigerant to R410A, that every new piece of equipment had to be R410A, and all the manufacturing companies had to retool everything to make this new equipment, because the compressors had to be different, the tubing had to be thicker, the coils had to be thicker, because the pressures were much higher. I'm not the brightest bulb in the world all the time, but I thought this is happening, and it's actually happening relatively fast. So we made a switch fast. We were one of the first in our market to put in an R410A unit, and we never looked back. I mean, we quit selling R22 way before anyone else did, and we were looking in the future, because these were being produced, they were being manufactured, and a lot of companies didn't want to touch them. They didn't want to sell them. And again, I was my own salesman back then. So what did I do? Would you like the old stuff, R22, or would you like what everything's going to, R410A? And, a lot of people said, well, I don't want the old stuff. So we got the new stuff in there, and it worked fine. And it It just, it was the McAfee way. It was trailblazing, for McAfee along the way. And then, other companies were like, well, they would actually tell customers, we've never installed one of them. It just made us look so good. Train your team not to say certain things that will affect you and hurt your business. So, also as R22 then, when R410A came out and R22 became the bad guy, that it's killing the ozone, which still I don't think there's any evidence that it actually did, but that's my opinion, and that's what I've studied, is there's really no evidence that it killed the ozone. The ozone opens up and closes, and it has been for several hundred years. But anyway, I knew that R22 was going to skyrocket in price, and sure enough, it started going up. So I bought several 10 or 12 skids, 40 per skid of R22, because I knew we were still going to have to service R22 for years. It wasn't just going to go away. So, but we bought at a very low price, and it went up, I don't know, if I tell you 50 times, it went up. It went up a lot, and boy, it was great having that stock in here that we paid a very, very low price for, and all our competitors were still paying. They're paying top dollar for it. So I don't know. Did it make me $1 million or $2 million over the past 10 years by buying that? Yeah, I'd say yes, because we raised our prices on it, just like what everyone else was charging for it, but what we paid for it was much, much lower. So our profit margins were much, much higher. So anyway, that's trailblazing. That's thinking outside the box. And, if strategy based on uncertainty is extremely risky because you have no idea. And I thought about this as I was writing this. Today this is July of 2022. If we, the United States, experience high inflation like we are right now, we will see a recession. Now, that's certain. According to our history, we're going to see a recession. That's certain. How big of a recession is uncertain. We don't know. We can't peg that. It could be, when I started in 1990, we were in a recession. I just didn't know any better. I went out there and started knocking on doors and making things happen. Trailblazing, even in the 90s. There's less risk with certainty. There's more risk with uncertainty. So be careful as far as that goes. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, right? All right, so lastly here, becoming a trailblazer is not easy. It's not for everyone. It's not easy. A lot of people are extremely comfortable running their business and doing exactly the same thing every single day and growing at an extremely slower rate unless you're in Florida, Las Vegas, Arizona, and parts of Texas, where it is just unbelievably hot, and you're an expert in HVAC when you run a company. You're an expert in business when you run a company in those areas. That's for sure. Okay, so if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. The only way to know you've succeeded is when others tell you have. Now, I'll tell you, that goes for all trailblazers, all high achievers, all mover shakers kind of people. We're the last to know that we have succeeded sometimes because we just expected. We were either we just expected to succeed, or we didn't do enough to succeed, unfortunately. And that's not a male thing. That's not a female thing. It's possibly a personality thing, but it's a title that's earned and granted, but can't be chased down. It's really hard. It's really hard I'm not giving you anything to here's what you need. Here's the ingredients to be a trailblazer. You either know you are or you know you're not. However, there are some trailblazers that just needed a little bump. They needed to know it's okay. It's okay to be a trailblazer. It's okay to get out there, make things happen, and it's okay to fail. Because the next one may not fail. The next one's going to be a grand slam. You just never know. Okay? So with the right mindset, you can blaze your own trail and change the way the game is played in your industry with the right mindset. And it's not how much money you have, honestly. It's not where you were raised or who you were raised by. It's you either got it or you don't. I mean, if you have that desire to go out and make things happen and blaze some trails, you can do this. And it's fun, it's exciting. And before we wrap up, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe below. You can also support this podcast by rating and reviewing on iTunes or your preferred listening platform. Keep listening because we're just trying to help you grow your business, grow it in a different way, think differently than all your competition, and of course, sleep better at night. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Greg McAfee Show. No spaces, no underscores. Be sure to tune in every week. We've always got some exciting things happening. And someone wrote just the other day about maybe you can go over some of your trucks, how they're designed, what they look like, how do you stock them, all that type of thing. So I'm going to look into that and see what we can do about putting some pictures up here of our trucks and the inside, outside, and where we park them and all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of neat to know if you're growing a business. So thanks for listening. And as always, carry on and have a great day.